Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Watts here on a Thursday night, and we are concluding our week of Beatrix Potter's books with The Tale of Tom Kitten by Beatrix Potter. And this is another little story, fun little story about an animal, and the animal has an adventure and what happens next. So one thing about this story is that they use a lot of old-fashioned words for the clothes that they used to wear. And so along the way, I might share the word and they give you another word that means the same thing so that you know what they're talking about. So let's get started. Once upon a time, there were 3 little kittens, and their names were Mittens, Tom Kitten, and Moppet. They had dear little fur coats of their own, and they tumbled about the doorstep and played in the dust. But one day their mother, Mrs. Tabitha Twitchit, expected friends to tea. So she fetched the kittens indoors to wash and dress them before the fine company arrived. Has that ever happened to you? Did you ever have to go in and get changed and cleaned up before company comes? Let's see what happens next. Well, first she scrubbed their faces. This one is Moppet. Then she brushed their fur. This one is Mittens. Then she combed their tails and whiskers. This is Tom Kitten. Tom was very naughty, and he scratched. Mrs. Tabitha dressed Moppet and Mittens in clean pinafores and tuckers. Okay, so that's their old-fashioned clothes. And then she took all sorts of elegant, uncomfortable clothes out of a chest of drawers in order to dress up her son, Thomas. Tom Kitten was very fat, and he had grown. Several buttons burst off his clothes. His mother sewed them on again. So here is Mom Cat, and she's dressing her girls in fancy dresses. And look at Tom Kitten and see how he's outgrown his clothes. That's right. So I love his face in this picture. Look at his expression. He does not look like he's having a good time. Okay, so his mom's working really hard, right? She's getting them dressed. She's sewing their clothes. Okay, so when the 3 kittens were ready, Mrs. Tabitha unwisely turned them out into the garden to be out of her way while she made hot buttered toast. Now keep your frocks clean, children. You must walk on your hind legs. Keep away from the dirty ash pit and from Sally Henny Penny and from the pigsty and from the puddle ducks. You remember the puddle ducks? That's right. We read that story about them the other night. Well, Moppet and Mittens walked down the garden path unsteadily. After a while, they walked on their pinafores and fell on their noses. And when they stood up, there were several green smears. So here they are. You can see they're having a difficult time staying clean. Let us climb up the rocks and sit on the garden wall, said Moppet. They turned their pinafores back to front and went up with a skip and a jump. Moppet's white tucker fell down into the road. So here they are. And they're all dressed up trying to play. Has that ever happened to you? Have you tried to play outside when you're all dressed up and try to stay clean? It's not easy, is it? Well, Tom Kitten was quite unable to jump when he was walking on his back legs in trousers, pants. He came up the rocks, breaking the ferns and shedding his buttons left and right. So you can see the buttons on his clothes continue to come off. And he's making a mess. Well, he was all in pieces when he reached the top of the wall. Moppet and Mittens tried to pull him together. His hat fell off and the rest of his buttons burst. While they were in their difficulties, there was a pit-pat, piddle-pat, and the three puddle ducks came along the high, hard road, marching one behind the other and doing the goose step. Pit-pat, piddle-pat, pit-pat, waddle-pat. They stopped and stood in a row and stared up at the kittens. They had very small eyes and looked surprised. Then the two duck birds, Rebecca and Jemima Puddle Duck, picked up the hat and the tucker and put them on. Uh-oh, what's going to happen next? Mittens laughed so hard that she fell off the wall. Moppet and Tom descended after her. The pinafores and all the rest of Tom's clothes came off all the way down. "Come, Mr. Drake Puddle Duck," said Moppet. "Come and help us dress him. Come and button up Tom." Mr. Drake Puddle Duck advanced in a slow, sideways manner and picked up the various articles of clothing. But he put them on himself. They fitted him even worse than Tom Kitten. "It is a very fine morning," said Mr. Drake Puddle Duck. And he and Jemima and Rebecca Puddle Duck set off up the road, keeping step. Pit-pat, piddle-pat, pit-pat, waddle-pat. Then Tabitha Twitchit, remember that's the mom, well, she came down the garden, and she found her kittens on the wall with no clothes on. Uh-oh. How do you think she's going to react? Let's see. She pulled them off the wall, disciplined them, and took them back to the house. "My friends will arrive in a minute, and you are not fit to be seen. I am affronted," said Mrs. Tabitha Twitchit. So she was not in a good mood. Well, she sent them upstairs, and I am sorry to say that she told her friends that they were in bed with the measles, which was not true. She had run out of patience. Quite on the contrary, they were not in bed, not in the least. Somehow there were very extraordinary noises overhead, which disturbed the dignity and repose of the tea party. And look at all the mischief that they're getting into upstairs. Did they learn their lesson? I don't think so. And I think someday I shall have to make another larger book to tell you more about Tom Kitten. What a mess. Look at that. As for the puddle ducks, they went into a pond. The clothes came off directly because there were no buttons. And Mr. Drake Puddle Duck and Jemima and Rebecca have been looking for the clothes ever since. The end. I hope you enjoyed tonight's story about Tom Kitten. So this week we've been reading stories from the same author, Beatrix Potter. And this author, I don't know, these books must be about 100 years old. They are so old, but they are adorable. And if you are interested in reading more, there are a lot of stories that Beatrix Potter wrote. And there's a list of them right here. So when the library opens again, if you want to learn more about Beatrix Potter, you can ask the librarian, and he or she can show you all the little books that you can enjoy. And one of the things I like about the Beatrix Potter books is that all the animals have clothes on, and they all act very human-like, right? And they all can talk, and they can sing, and they can get into trouble. And so it's a lot of fun to read these books and just imagine what it would be like to be an animal that could talk. Anyway, I hope you have a good weekend, and I will see you again on Monday. Take care.